make this simple. The easiest way for me to illustrate this, I think, is to show the output of an integration test that we have now.
Does anybody
Uh,
have an objection if we go 5 minutes over? This is just such valuable time. Okay, got 10 minutes.
okay, so what I've been working on is, today, um, whenever you upload an asset, whatever it is, it ends up getting converted to a big blob of text, which then is used in various ways through the threads, right? So to enable this multi-document piece, what we need to do is take those big blobs, turn them into chunks, and then allow similarity searches so that we can, and create a vector for a prompt and then do a similarity search and then potentially use documents that are there. So really what, I mean, this is all like kind of RAG 101 stuff, so it's not particularly interesting. But I just want to point out a couple of things so everybody understands some of the challenges with this, right? Um, so with our current chunking strategy that we're using, everybody is familiar with the situational awareness PDF. That's 1,300 chunks. Okay. So what happens for each of these chunks is a lot of it's bulk operations, but each one of those chunks gets submitted to an API to be embedded. And each one of those chunks are stored in a database, which ends up being in a, the vectors for the embeddings are stored in a database, which then end up in an index. So um, the reason I bring this up is so everybody understands like this is going to be, at scale, a massive amount of data that we're storing and doing. So at the moment, from embedding perspective, we're doing 768 dimensions. Okay. So what that means is that there's actually an array of float 32s stored in a database, 768 entries in the array. Um, so this is, like I said, it's big. And the embeddings, particularly like the chunks, all the text-based stuff compresses really well. The actual embeddings field in this thing only compresses by 2%. So that's going to get really big. So that's one thing I wanted to point out. The other thing that I wanted to point out is on the similarity search side that
Oh, sorry,
this,
but before you move, what kind of latency are you looking at to get the document, get the embeddings, and get them inserted in the database?
yeah, Gemini's this right now. Insertions in the database are non-negligible to the rest of the operation. The getting it off of getting the embeddings done themselves. An individual document like 1,400 rows ends up being in the ballpark of like 60 API calls
So from the time I've uploaded a document to the time that I can chat with it is like 2 minutes, something like that.
on a smaller document. No, but like the situational awareness one, yes, right.
Okay.
Okay, so that's kind of just covered a high overview of what we're doing. We're chunking it, we're storing it in a database, but that's pretty useless. At some point, we actually have to go on the other side and make it useful, which is, again, prompt, make an embedding on the prompt, and then you conduct a similarity search. And I think this is really where we're gonna win or lose, which is right here, is on this relevance score. So if you read a bunch of white papers and you read all the blog posts, what really people are saying is um, in particular the relevance, the closer to zero, the more relevant. If it hits one, it's not relevant at all. So most of the documentation or anything that you read about this is everybody is shooting and targeting for the lowest relevant score that you can have, right? Which means it's the most similar. I don't think that really matters as much. I think what we've got to figure out is where we got to answer two questions, right? And that's through getting user feedback, our own testing, et cetera, is we got to figure out like uh, if it's not, if it's above a certain threshold, we just won't use it, right? I think that's what we've heard users say thus far as we appreciate you telling us when I don't have any knowledge that can answer this question, right? And then the second part being is really figuring out what that sweet spot is of the sizing of the chunking and the vectorization and getting the similarities. So
Hey Shelby, I just want to understand what you just said because I've always thought that a relevance score of 1 means that the chunk is fully relevant, like 100% relevant. And I think I just heard you say the opposite.
Yeah, so the relevance is actually the distance between the 2 points in space, right? So a vector is just a point in space. So what we're asking is we're asking the Euclidean distance between the 2 points. So 0 would be no distance between the two. So if it's an exact match, it'll be 0. It'll be one-ish if they're very far apart.
And something I heard you say just now was that we want to we're going to start off with our best guess for what that relevance threshold is, so that when a user says how many Big Macs were sold and we don't have that data, we tell them we couldn't find anything versus trying to hallucinate or whatever. And I think that kicks off a conversation, Andy, for Monday for design as well, which is as we talk about how we're communicating what knowledge is in scope. I think we also need to have a mechanism that allows the user to change that relevancy threshold if they didn't get an answer, or maybe the answer still seemed too broad, where some intuitive mechanism for them to change the threshold.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately we will, I'm assuming we're going to keep it with the generation 1 where they can actually see the source, right?
Yeah.
So should be able to exclude sources and rerun the question, right? So that's that. So this is all up right now, at the moment where it's at, it's in a pull request. It's going to get merged into the search feature branch. And then next week we'll start actually wiring it into, the prompting side of things. So
And so looking at the data here, we get the chunk text. Is it your opinion that that chunk text would become I guess let me ask differently. How do we point them back to the story tile, whether it's the time code is 3 minutes and 30 seconds into some video or page 12 of the document?
I mean, it's a conversation you and I are going to have. I've been focused on this part. But my opinion is that we're ultimately going to have to change. This is what is getting chunked.
Mhm.
And that's not, this isn't the source document that's getting chunked. I'm chunking post Tika right now. And I think we need to change it to chunk and do what we're doing with Tika in one step. But,
Okay.
I've been here for 2 weeks, so I didn't want to rewrite the entire world in the first couple of weeks. So just trying to make progress to at least enable the multi-document side of it first. So